Welcome to Cruise News, your daily update on everything happening at sea. Visit cruisenews.io to see today's stories and sign up for email alerts.
Thank you for having me.
So today's briefing is focusing entirely on the practical safety, the health standards, and, well, the real operational realities that govern modern cruise travel.
Right.
We are looking closely at the mechanical forces involved in river navigation, the preventative public health inspections that occur before a ship ever boards, and the multi-agency logistics required for an offshore medical evacuation.
It's a lot of ground to cover, but it all ties back to passenger safety.
Exactly. So let's begin with the operational realities of navigating inland waterways. On the morning of August 17, 2026, the Carnival Valor was approaching the port of New Orleans. This was on the final night of a 4-night Western Caribbean cruise.
Right.
And while transiting the Mississippi River, the vessel experienced a sudden, severe list, meaning it leaned sharply to its starboard side.
Yeah, and it's important to understand the physical scale of the vessel involved here before we get into the details.
Okay, lay that out for us.
So the Carnival Valor, which was built in 2004, it measures 952 feet in length.
Wow.
And it weighs roughly 110,000 gross tons. At double occupancy, it carries 2,980 guests. So maneuvering a vessel of that massive size within a river system it's a highly complex logistical operation.
Right, it's not like turning a speedboat.
No, not at all.
And the passenger accounts of this specific maneuver, they really highlight just how sudden it was. Passengers reported the ship made a sharp, sudden turn. And according to these accounts from the people on board, this was an evasive maneuver to avoid a powerless cargo vessel in the river.
That's what was reported by the guests there.
Right. One passenger, who remained anonymous, stated, and I quote here, "We went from straight up to full list in about 1 second."
Yeah.
They noted that nearby luggage carts slammed against the walls. We also have passenger video showing the physical impact of this. Water from an upper deck pool washed entirely across the open deck and flowed into an indoor dining area while guests were rushing to collect their personal items.
Which is obviously a very startling experience for anyone on board.
Definitely. There was also a reported sense of anxiety among guests because there was no immediate announcement from the bridge during the event.
Right, which I should point out is actually standard protocol during an active navigational incident.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So they wouldn't tell the passengers what's happening right away?
No, because in a moment where the ship requires immediate evasive action, the captain and the bridge crew, they are entirely focused on communicating with the engine room, monitoring the ship's heading, and, tracking the hazard itself.
That makes sense.
Activating the public address system is secondary to securing the physical safety of the vessel. The priority is navigating the ship.
Okay, I see. Now, Carnival Cruise Line did confirm that the list occurred. However, they explicitly did not corroborate the passenger accounts regarding a powerless cargo vessel.
Right.
Carnival's official statement read, vessel movements of this nature can occur during normal navigation, and the circumstances are being reviewed.
Yeah.
There is a significant disconnect there that we need to unpack. I mean, passengers are describing a terrifying sudden tilt that sent pool water down the stairs. But Carnival is categorizing this as normal navigation. How do we reconcile those two perspectives?
Well, we reconcile them by separating the sheer mechanical capability of the ship from the passenger experience.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
From a maritime engineering standpoint, a cruise ship is designed with a very high degree of primary stability. It is built to withstand significant lists during hard, high-speed rudder commands without compromising its structural integrity.
So it's not going to capsize just from turning sharply?
Exactly. No, it's not risking a capsize. And when you look at the operating environment of the lower Mississippi River, it's a maintained deep draft channel, and it's heavily shared with commercial ships and industrial barge traffic.
Right. It's a very busy working river.
Yes. And unlike many inland waterways, it does not have locks or dams to regulate the water flow.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so that means river pilots are dealing with incredibly strong, unpredictable currents, especially around bends. They also have to contend with changing shoaling.
What is shoaling?
That's when sediment builds up and rapidly alters the depth and shape of the riverbed. So they're dealing with that, plus notably narrow sections of the navigable channel.
So if a hazard suddenly appears in that narrow channel, whether that is shoaling or potentially a powerless cargo vessel, as the passengers reported, the captain has very little room for error.
Exactly. In that confined, dynamic environment, a pilot or captain may be forced to execute a hard, immediate turn to maintain safe separation from a hazard. So when Carnival categorizes this as normal navigation, they are referring to the fact that utilizing the ship's maximum steering capability to avoid a collision or a grounding is standard, required operational procedure.
I see. Even if it feels extreme to the passengers.
Right. Cruise ships usually make very gradual course alterations specifically to prioritize guest comfort, but when an abrupt maneuver is forced upon them, the centrifugal force of a 110,000-ton vessel turning sharply is immense.
Yeah, going back to the physics of it.
Exactly. The physical consequences, water displacing from the pools, unsecured luggage carts sliding across the deck, those are the direct mechanical result of the ship operating exactly as commanded to prioritize safety over comfort.
That distinction makes the physical reality much clearer, and the outcome here supports the fact that the ship's integrity was maintained.
Yes, it does.
There were no serious injuries or damage reported. Crew members responded immediately to clear the water on the open deck, and medical assistance was offered and provided to a few guests who requested it.
Right.
And the ship arrived in New Orleans precisely on schedule at 8 a.m. Central Daylight Time, and it departed on time at 3:30 p.m. for its next 5-night sailing to Cozumel and Progreso.
It is worth noting, however, what information remains outstanding here.
What are we still waiting on?
Well, Carnival has not yet identified specific river conditions as a contributing cause to the list. They have not confirmed if their crew assisted the reported cargo vessel, or if they called authorities on its behalf, and they have not provided a timetable for the completion of their internal review.
Okay, so we will monitor for that review.
Yes.
Moving from the immediate physical safety of river navigation, we want to look at the preventative public health oversight that occurs long before passengers even board.
This is a really important topic.
It is. And this brings us to our second story regarding the CDC's Vessel Sanitation Program, or the VSP.
Right.
During an unannounced March 29, 2026 inspection, the Norwegian Dawn received a failing score of 84. Now, the minimum passing score under this framework is an 86. Any score of 85 or lower is officially classified as not satisfactory.
Right. 84 is a failure.
And looking at the 2026 data, the Dawn was the only vessel among the 7 lowest-scoring ships to actually fail the inspection. Norwegian Cruise Line submitted a corrective action report 5 days later. Can you walk us through the actual framework of the Vessel Sanitation Program? Like, what are inspectors physically evaluating to generate these scores?
Absolutely. So the VSP operates under the jurisdiction of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. These inspections are unannounced, they happen twice a year, and they apply to any ship carrying 13 or more passengers on a foreign itinerary that calls at a United States port.
Okay, so any major cruise ship hitting a U.S. port.
Exactly. And the standards they enforce aren't arbitrary. They're drawn directly from the FDA Food Code and the World Health Organization's Guide to Ship Sanitation.
So it's very codified. What exactly are they looking at when they get on board?
When inspectors board, they evaluate 8 specific operational areas. They review food preparation and dining spaces, checking things like temperature logging and cross-contamination protocols.
Right.
They inspect the potable water systems, testing halogen levels to ensure the drinking water is safe. They evaluate the chemical balance of pools and whirlpools.
Okay, so water systems are a big part.
Yes, very big. They also inspect medical facilities, children's activity centers, passenger cabins, the ship's ventilation systems, and common areas.
That is extremely comprehensive.
It is. And if a ship fails, or if certain violations require immediate oversight, re-inspections are conducted when needed.
I want to look at how the Norwegian Dawn's failing score fits into the broader industry context, particularly for the Florida cruise market. The Dawn is scheduled to join the Jacksonville seasonal cruise lineup from November 2026 through March 2027.
Right.
And if we look at 2 other ships linked to Jacksonville, they both passed recently. The Carnival Elation scored a 98 on May 7, and the Norwegian Gem scored a 94 on March 23.
Yes, passing scores are the norm.
Right. High compliance is very common across the industry, correct?
It is very common. In the 2026 CDC records, inspectors recorded 42 perfect scores of 100.
Oh, wow. 42 perfect scores.
Yes. Those receiving full marks included Royal Caribbean Icon of the Seas, the Carnival Celebration, the Disney Dream, and the Norwegian Viva.
So 100 is definitely achievable.
It is. But it is crucial to understand how to interpret this data. We look to Gavin McGregor-Skinner, an infection prevention expert.
What did he have to say about it?
He stated clearly, and I quote, It is very important not to confuse the wider availability of cruise health data with a higher incidence rate on cruise ships.
Okay.
He's pointing out that just because we have immediate access to these strict, detailed sanitation reports online, it doesn't mean ships are inherently more prone to illness than a land-based facility.
Right, because we don't look up land-based facilities with the same frequency.
Exactly. Furthermore, scores can fluctuate wildly between inspections based on minor operational procedural errors on a given day.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure. For example, the Carnival Breeze scored a perfect 100 in January 2026. Then, during a subsequent inspection on May 14th, it dropped to an 86, which is the absolute minimum passing score.
The fluctuation is a critical detail. So structurally, this system really functions as a professional, factual analogy to a municipal restaurant health inspection.
That's a great way to put it, yes.
It captures a strict operational snapshot in time. It shows how the crew handled protocols on that specific Tuesday afternoon. It does not act as a crystal ball for illness, guaranteeing whether an outbreak will or will not occur on a future sailing.
Exactly. It's a snapshot, not a forecast.
Given that reality, how can passengers practically utilize this publicly available CDC reporting prior to booking?
Well, by reading beyond the top-line numerical score, the CDC publishes the full individual inspection reports on their database.
Oh, they put the whole report online?
Yes, the full text. These documents detail the exact specific violations observed, whether it was a malfunctioning dishwasher gauge or an improper temperature log in a single galley, and they list the required corrective steps.
Okay, so you can see exactly what went wrong.
Exactly. So when a prospective passenger sees a failing score, like the Norwegian Dawn's 84, they can look directly at the corrective action report that the cruise line filed 5 days later.
Right, you mentioned they filed that within 5 days.
Yes. And the practical utility here is observing the cruise line's operational responsiveness. Submitting that report within 5 days demonstrates the procedural mechanism is working as intended.
Because they're actively fixing it.
Right. The cruise line identifies the systemic or isolated errors, documents the solutions, and brings the ship back into compliance long before its next major deployment, such as the Dawn's upcoming season in Jacksonville.
So it's about transparency and correction.
Precisely.
All right, we are pivoting now from those preventative health measures to reactive critical medical protocols when emergencies actually happen offshore.
And this is where logistics become incredibly complex.
Definitely. So on August 8, 2026, a passenger and their spouse were airlifted from Royal Caribbean Oz Ovation of the Seas.
Yes.
And as a news organization, we are reporting this soberly and respectfully. Authorities have not disclosed the patient's identity or medical condition. We are focusing strictly on the operational logistics of the response.
Right, just the facts of the operation.
So this incident took place 52 nautical miles northwest of Tofino, British Columbia. It occurred just 1 day after the ship departed Vancouver for a 7-night Alaska voyage terminating in Seward.
Right, so they were fairly early in the itinerary, but still far offshore.
Let's look at the mechanics of this operation. At 5:30 p.m., the captain announced a medical emergency and immediately increased the ship's speed to reach a rendezvous point. A passenger noted the ship accelerated from 11 knots to 22 knots, which is the listed top speed for a Quantum-class ship.
Yes, 22 knots is moving very fast for a vessel of that size.
Why push a vessel of that size to its maximum speed for a medical rendezvous?
It is entirely about closing the distance to reduce the flight time for the rescue aircraft.
Oh, because of the helicopters.
Exactly. Helicopters have strict fuel and range limitations, particularly when flying 52 nautical miles offshore into maritime weather conditions.
Right, that's a long way over open water.
It is. Furthermore, executing a hover and hoist operation over a moving vessel consumes a significant amount of fuel. By pushing the Ovation of the Seas to 22 knots toward a coordinated rendezvous point, the captain effectively shortens the helicopter's transit time.
Which gives them more time on scene.
Exactly. It maximizes their operational window to safely stabilize and extract the patient before fuel becomes a critical issue.
The Joint Rescue Coordination Center Victoria managed the response, and they dispatched 2 separate aircraft, a CC-295 Kingfisher airplane and a CH-149 Cormorant helicopter.
Yes.
And the Kingfisher airplane arrived first. Can you explain the necessity of sending a fixed-wing airplane ahead of the rescue helicopter?
Sure. The Kingfisher acts as the coordination and positioning asset. It flies overhead to establish direct radio communications with the ship's bridge, assesses the weather and sea state, and surveys the deck layout to determine the safest hoist zone.
So they do all the prep work.
Exactly. By handling the logistical coordination and airspace management, the fixed-wing crew allows the pilots of the Cormorant helicopter, which arrives shortly after, to focus entirely on the highly technical, dangerous task of matching the ship's speed and maintaining a stable hover just feet above the deck.
That makes total sense, dividing the labor so the helicopter pilot can just focus on flying.
Exactly.
And the extraction itself requires immense precision. Search and rescue technicians descended from the Cormorant helicopter down to the ship. They stabilized the patient on the deck and then first hoisted the spouse up into the helicopter.
Right.
The patient was then hoisted via a stretcher, followed finally by the rescue technicians. The patient was immediately transported to a hospital in Victoria.
A very coordinated professional extraction.
Definitely. And following the airlift, the Ovation of the Seas slowed back to its standard cruising speed and continued its scheduled itinerary without further delay. It called at Ketchikan, Sitka, and Skagway, completed its scenic cruising at Hubbard Glacier, and arrived at Seward's new cruise terminal on August 14th.
Right, so the ship's operations returned to normal.
We know what the aviation response looks like, but what is the shipboard medical framework that manages the patient leading up to that airlift?
Royal Caribbean, like major modern cruise lines, staffs its onboard medical centers with licensed doctors and nurses. The company states that their facilities meet or exceed the healthcare guidelines for cruise ship medical facilities.
Who sets those guidelines?
They are established by the American College of Emergency Physicians.
Okay, the ACEP.
Right. Those guidelines dictate strict operational standards across multiple areas. They mandate specific medical staffing levels, required emergency equipment, onboard imaging capabilities like X-ray machines, infection control protocols, pharmacy stocking requirements, and strict medical documentation.
So it's a very capable facility.
It is. However, it is vital to understand the operational limitations. The primary goal of a cruise ship medical center is to stabilize emergency patients.
Stabilize, not necessarily cure.
Exactly. They perform initial triage, run basic diagnostics, and provide life-saving critical interventions. But they are not fully equipped hospitals.
Right.
Once a patient is stabilized, if their condition requires long-term intensive care, complex surgery, or exceeds the capacity of the onboard facility, the medical protocol dictates arranging an immediate evacuation for shoreside treatment, just like we saw here.
Let me stop you there, because we need to push back on a very common assumption passengers make. Many cruisers aboard a ship assuming that if they walk into the onboard medical center, it functions as a seamless extension of their domestic healthcare network.
Oh, yeah, that is a huge misconception.
Can you plainly explain the financial realities of receiving this kind of stabilization and care at sea?
The financial reality can be a severe shock to passengers. The medical center on a cruise ship operates as an independent entity outside of domestic healthcare networks. Royal Caribbean's onboard medical facilities charge passengers directly for all treatments provided.
Directly to the passenger.
Yes. They do not accept land-based health insurance up front at the time of service.
Wow. So if a guest requires an emergency consultation, lab work, imaging, or stabilization medications prior to a medical airlift, how does that get billed?
Every single cost is charged directly to their onboard account. The passenger is financially responsible for settling that medical bill in full before disembarking the vessel.
So they are paying completely out of pocket on the ship and then dealing with their insurance later.
Exactly. Guests are provided with detailed medical documentation by the ship's staff. It is then the guest's responsibility to submit those bills to their domestic health insurers post-cruise.
And do they usually get reimbursed?
Well, the critical issue is that whether or not they receive any reimbursement depends entirely on their individual policy. Many standard domestic health insurance plans offer severely limited coverage or zero coverage entirely once a passenger travels outside of territorial waters.
This underlines a broader theme connecting all three of these incidents today, from the physics of navigating a river channel to the strict parameters of public health inspections to the logistics and billing of offshore emergency care.
It does, and it highlights a defining requirement of the modern cruise industry. Passengers must be active participants in their own safety and health.
Right.
That participation requires acknowledging the physical variables of navigation, actively reviewing public health data prior to booking, and most crucially, understanding the strict limits of their own health insurance policies before they leave territorial waters.
Thanks for listening to Cruise News. Visit cruisenews.io to catch up on the latest updates and sign up for free email alerts.